I want to tell you a story. It starts a long time ago, probably the night of the 14th of April, 1912. There's a ship going across the Atlantic on its maiden voyage. You've probably heard of its name before. It's the Titanic. Spoiler alert, I'm not going to try and change the ending, okay? That evening, working in the first class lounge was Bill Barrows, 32-year-old Londoner. Now, Bill thought he was the luckiest man in the world. Not because of the hard hours and the low pay. They used to do a 13-hour day on the Titanic for the equivalent in today's money of £4,000 a year. It's about £1 an hour. It wasn't the hard hours or the money that made him happy. It was the fact that back in London, he was engaged to be married to a lady called Sarah Axford from Edmonton, North London. In fact, Sarah had already bought her wedding dress. So excited. And he sent an excited telegram from the Titanic to her saying, "Sailing gaily, will see you on my return." Also on the ship that night, there was another man who also thought he was incredibly lucky, Bertram Dean. Bertram was from Southampton, and he was travelling to America with his wife and his little boy and his baby girl, Milvina. And he was going to Kansas to set himself up as in a tobacco shop. And he felt even more lucky because the ship they should have been going on, there was a national coal strike, and their ship didn't have enough coal to leave Southampton Harbour. So the White Star Line, the owners of the Titanic, did a goodwill gesture. They gave him and his family complimentary tickets to be on the Titanic. And you lot think sometimes you have bad luck, eh? Do you know, as an aside, there's a sailor who actually got sacked when they got to Cherbourg from Southampton. He actually got laid off. It was like a disciplinary, and he got made redundant from the Titanic. That must be the luckiest sacking anyone's ever had in their lives, wasn't it? Anyway, that's a digression. Back to the story. So that night, at 11:39, the lookouts saw the infamous iceberg. The ship tried to turn, but it was too late, and the side of the boat struck the iceberg. Water poured in, and 3 hours later, the unsinkable ship was at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Bertram rushed his family up to the boat deck, where luck was still with him. He got his family into the last lifeboat to leave the Titanic. He waved goodbye to Milvina, and he said he'd be on the next boat. That was the last time anyone saw Bertram Dean. When they were rescued, Milvina's mother took them back to Southampton, her children back to Southampton, and Milvina grew up in the city. She became a cartographer and then a civil servant. And Milvina, who lost her father on the Titanic, made a choice to live life with joy. And if ever you see pictures of her or television interviews, she is a fun, happy, upbeat woman. In fact, if you Google her or go on YouTube, you'll see her. Not now, but later on when you get home, have a look for Milvina Dean. And in the Milvina Dean Memorial Garden in Southampton, there's her words, her epitaph, which says, "Have a kind heart and a sense of humour." That's how she lived her life. So what happened to Bill Barrows and Sarah, his fiancée? Well, of the 2,200 people on the Titanic, only 700 survived. And half the people who died were actually members of the crew. And Bill Barrows was one of those. Sarah locked away her wedding dress in an attic. Never came out again till she died 50 years later. She never married, and she wore black like Queen Victoria for the rest of her life. For those who knew her, and I've heard this recounts, she never had a kind word to say about anyone or anything. Makes me think, how can two people who suffer the same tragedy live life so differently? Sarah lost her fiancé and lived in a permanent funeral. Milvina lost her father on a ship they should never have been on. And she actually featured in a Nokia photographic competition, 1,000 Reasons for Living. How different. And it made me think, and I've come to a profound conclusion, I suppose, about this event. And it's this. It's not the events that shape our lives. It's our response to the events that shape our lives. There's an old German proverb which says, you can't change the wind, but you can change your sails. Imagine if we all stopped blaming the winds in our life and changed our sails. What could we achieve? What journeys could we go on? What happiness could we bring to our lives and to the lives of others? What legacy could we leave behind us? The choice is yours. I've made my choice. How will you choose to deal with the events that come into your lives going forward? Will you do it like Milvina Dean with her kind heart and her sense of humour? Or will you do it like like Sarah Axford, who, according to my grandmother who knew her, said she was a miserable old witch? And my grandmother, 88-year-olds have that ability to say these things, don't they? Say it as it is. My grandmother should know, because Sarah Axford was my great-great-aunt.
Wow.
Thank you.